All right, so we are in the final stages of this vote count that is taking place in the United States of America to determine as to who will be in the White House. And with the trends that are coming in, it increasingly appears that it is Joe Biden who is now in touching distance of emerging as the next president of the United States. However, the Trump campaign has made some pretty big claims of fraud and has also threatened multiple legal actions to stall the presidential verdict. So let's break down as to how states see the recount law. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Each state has its own rules and regulations. Now, first up, let's take a look at the battleground state of Pennsylvania, where Joe Biden has taken a lead with nearly about 49.6% of the votes, followed by Trump with about 49.3% of the votes. This, of course, is a crucial state. The counting is still on in Pennsylvania. It's got about 20 electoral college votes. Joe Biden does not need to win the state, but Donald Trump still needs to win the state if he has to stay in the race. And he, at this point of time, we're given to understand, is quite clearly in the lead. Now, there is an automatic provision for a recount in Pennsylvania. As per the law, a recount happens automatically if the margin of victory is less than or equal to 0.5%. But for a recount to happen, the deadline is 5 p.m. by the second Thursday following the election, which means the 12th of November. Now, the recount of votes in Georgia was also announced. Georgia was closest to finish its counting. Biden has got about 49.4% of the vote share. And Donald Trump, who was leading in Georgia all throughout, towards the end slipped below Biden. He now has about 49.3% of the vote share. Now, Biden is leading Georgia by a margin of 4,185 votes. And the lead is growing. Up to 8,410 overseas and military ballots may arrive by Friday afternoon deadline. Now, Georgia's Secretary of State has said that a recount is highly likely given the pretty tight margin. However, there is no provision of an automatic recount in Georgia. As per the law, a candidate should request for a recount if the margin of victory is less than or equal to 0.5% of the total votes cast. And the recount must be requested within 2 business days after the results have been certified. So this, of course, is what is happening at this point of time in the United States of America. Remember, we are in the final stretch of counting, and it remains to be seen as to what will, in fact, happen. And Donald Trump, although he's quite clearly trailing, is not giving up with a fight. He's made allegations that this is an election that has been marred by fraud. He also went on to state that this is an election that has not been won by the Democrats, but rather has been stolen by the Democrats, because that is the only way, he went on to state, that Joe Biden could get into the White House.
Just make sure you stay like 6 feet away.
And now to give us more updates in terms of what's been happening with the vote count, we're joined in by our correspondent Jagrati Dave, who's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Now, Jagrati, let me begin by asking you this. Everyone around the world, not just in the United States, is hoping and is anticipating that the result of this election will be announced. How soon can we expect that to happen?
Well, we were expecting Joe Biden to be giving a primetime address, and that was then cast into doubt because the results are still coming in and his margins are still unclear. There are still ballots coming in, provisional ballots that need to be sorted in those key battleground states. And so we understand that Joe Biden is going to be speaking at some point this evening, just talking about his position in the race. But I think it was felt that the counts would be closer to completion than they are right now, and that the networks would have called the election at this point, but they haven't. So I think there was sort of an expectation and anticipation, I think, both within in the country and in the Biden camp, that there would be more movement. So we're still waiting on those counts in Pennsylvania. There are still some outstanding ballots in Georgia that need to be counted. The count in Arizona is still coming through. through. So we're still playing the waiting game.
Absolutely, indeed. And the other big question is, how will the recount now proceed? Because the Trump camp has made it abundantly clear that they would want to have a recount in these states wherever the margin is less than 0.5%.
Yeah, so Georgia is looking at having a recount because the margin is so slim. So yes, it's likely that where there is the possibility of having a recount within the rules, there will be, as you say, some states automatically do a recount. Some states, a candidate has to request it, potentially pay for it themselves. It has to be within a certain margin. So that's all to play for, and that's all to happen as well. If those conditions arise.
Now, at this point of time, Jagrati, do we have any insights as to what is actually going on in the mind of Donald Trump? Is he being advised by legal experts? Because a lot of people say that, look, there is no basis for a legal case to go on and challenge this in the court, because Donald Trump alleges that, yes, there is, he feels that there is fraud, he feels that votes are being counted that should not be counted, but he's not able to give any kind of concrete proof or evidence that voter fraud has indeed taken place. Is he being advised by his legal team? What's happening there?
Well, there seems to be, according to reports, these two factions where you have some people who are urging President Trump to continue fighting. Some reports say that among those is the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows. And then there are others who are recognising, some aides perhaps in the White House, who perhaps recognise that, according to the numbers, if the trajectory continues as it is, then perhaps this is the end of this particular administration, and that they should start looking at the possibility of a transfer of power. Now, it seems that President Trump, based on his tweeting, is just not accepting the possibility that he may have to engage in a transfer of power. Indeed, there are reports that he won't concede. That is what some reporting is suggesting, which means we don't know really what this would mean for transfer of power between a Trump administration and a possible future Biden administration. It just, other reporting is suggesting that actually President Trump is unwilling to admit to the fact that he may have lost fair and square in an election based on the number of votes that have come in those key battleground states that require that require a candidate to get to that 270 electoral vote mark. He would rather entertain the idea that he is somehow the numbers are reflective of some kind of fraud or some kind of irregularity in the voting system, although officials and judges, according to how they're ruling at the moment in some of those lawsuits, are suggesting that there is no evidence of irregularities or election fraud. Indeed, those states in the past that have conducted mail-in voting are also not showing that there is no evidence of widespread election fraud.
Absolutely indeed, Jagrati. And just before we let you go, looking at this election from a distance, is there a possibility that Donald Trump could do something drastic? He still is the President of the United States of America. Is there some kind of an emergency power that he could perhaps invoke? He could, let's say, void this election. He could say that the result of this election is completely, goes against the democratic principles. Is there something where he could void this election and thereby try and dig in and stay on in power?
Well, amid those reports that the president might not concede, the Biden campaign replied saying that the US government is well able to remove trespassers from the White House. So, there is a sense that that the president is not going to engage in a transfer of power. There are some suggestions that he might not if the reports that he is not going to concede are true. But it's unclear as to really what he could do if if the election is called for Joe Biden, and if those processes start taking place. We've already seen a no-fly zone over Joe Biden's home in Wilmington, Delaware. We've already seen a Secret Service detail being assigned to Kamala Harris and to Joe Biden. So the machines of government and of governance are already sort of in place. So it's unclear really what the president really could do if the event of Joe Biden becoming president happens.
Absolutely, indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Jagruti Dave, for joining us and getting us all those insights. This, of course, remains the very crucial bit of the battle.